Well, I know that some of you know that last year a woman named Louise Hay died. Now, some of you might not be familiar with that name. Louise Hay was a best-selling spiritual teacher and writer. She published her very first book at the age of 60. That book was called You Can Heal Your Life, and it went on to sell more than 50 million copies, making her the fourth best-selling female author of all time, after J.K. Rowling, Danielle Steele, and Barbara Cartland. You Can Heal Your Life was one of the very first books to establish the connection between mind, body, and spirit. And the premise of the book is that since mind, body, and spirit are connected, then if there's an illness of the body, the root cause of it is in the mind, in your thoughts, in your feelings and emotions and beliefs. Louise Hay believed that the cause of disease, which in the book she spells dis-ease, dis-ease, that the cause of disease are things like stress and worry and fear and negative thought patterns about one's being, one's life. And so she believed that the fundamental cause, the thing that needed to be corrected, was that if we wanted to change what was happening with our bodies, to affect positive change in our health, all we needed to do was change our thinking. Now, when she died last year, Louise Hay received many amazing tributes online, but there were also quite a few negative things that were said about her. Some people said she was just a saleswoman selling New Age mumbo-jumbo. And some said that she was giving people false hope. And some said that she was saying that if you got sick, it was because you did something wrong, that it was your fault that you got a disease. Now, I share this with you this morning because this is what today's gospel is all about. Jesus is going out healing people, and he is showing us the way to heal our life. We are still in Mark chapter 1, believe it or not. In just one chapter, we're just 30 verses in. Jesus is already 30 years old, and he's out there doing all of these miraculous healings. And of course, you know them. You've read the Bible. Jesus has miraculous healings with people who are blind and deaf and paralyzed and suffering from diseases like leprosy. And yet, in every single one of those examples in the Bible, there is not one instance where Jesus takes credit for the healing. He never once says, "I have healed you." What does he say instead? Well, I compiled a list of them, and I'd like to read some of them for you. On the healing of the centurion's servant in Matthew 8, verse 13, he says, "Go, for it shall be done to you as you have believed." On the healing of the woman that touches Jesus' garment in Matthew 8, verse 22, Jesus says, "Woman, your faith has healed you." On the healing of the two blind men in Matthew 9, verse 28, Jesus says, "It will happen for you just as you have believed." On the healing of the Canaanite woman in Matthew 15, verse 28, Jesus says, "Woman, you have great faith. It will be just as you wish." On the healing of Bartimaeus in Mark 10, verse 53, Jesus says, "Go, your faith has healed you." On the healing of the Samaritan in Luke 17, verse 19, Jesus says, "Get up and go, your faith has healed you." And on the healing of the blind man in Luke 18, verse 42, Jesus says, "Receive your sight, for your faith has healed you." Those are just some examples. But time and time again, every time there's physical healing in the Bible, Jesus doesn't take credit for it. It sounds a lot like what Louise Hay was saying in her book. Jesus was saying things like, your faith has made you well. Your belief has made you whole. And my favorite line of his about healing is he says, it is done to you as you believe. It is done to you as you believe. Just like Louise Hay was saying, you can heal your life through the power of your belief. Now, if you were with us last Sunday, Jesus was talking about this power. If you remember, we were talking about power and authority. And Jesus said, his words to us are, you have been given the power and authority to cast out demons and to heal all kinds of disease and every kind of illness. You have. That's what he said. And that's why I love our words of integration this morning from Eckhart Tolle. He says a true spiritual teacher doesn't say, look at me, I'm the miracle worker. The true teacher doesn't say, look at me. The true teacher says, look within yourself. Within you is the power. Healing is an inside-out job. If you get our weekly epistle newsletter, the quote I had this week said, a true healer does not heal you. A healer holds space for you while you awaken your inner healer so that you can heal yourself. A true healer holds space. That's what Jesus is doing in each and every one of these instances. He is holding space for the person, but it is the power of their belief which is what causes the healing to occur. So yes, Jesus is a miracle worker, but Jesus was telling us that we have the same power. It is why Jesus said, all of the things that I have done, you can do. And then he added, these things and greater. Jesus came not to seek attention for himself. He wasn't saying, wow, look at all these miracles that I've done. Bow down and worship me. Give me praise and adoration. And he wasn't doing this because he was trying to prove that he was the Messiah. In fact, every single time in the Gospels, when the scribes and the Pharisees say to him, give us a sign of your power and authority, Jesus refuses. Jesus didn't care about proving his power and authority. He didn't care about praise. What he cared about was you. Jesus wanted to teach you to do all of the things that he did. He wanted to teach you to awaken this power that is within you, this power that you have to transform your life and to heal. So what Jesus is trying to get to in all of his healings is not attention for himself, but to do what he came for, to teach. Jesus was first and foremost a teacher, more than anything else. It's why they called him rabbi. And he wanted to teach us that we have this healing power within us. Now, some of you may remember that in 2016, a group of us from Douglas UCC went to New Mexico on a trip. And one of the places that we visited was a place called Chimayo. And Chimayo is known as the Lourdes of North America. Millions of people go to Chimayo every year with the belief that they will be healed. And when we got there, we saw literally hundreds of crutches and leg braces and wheelchairs that were left behind by people who experienced physical healing. Places like Chimayo and Lourdes have become places of healing because millions of people go there with the belief that they will be healed. Now, some of you might say, well, Pastor Sal, you know, my mother was a woman of great belief. She believed in God and she believed in herself, and yet my mother still died of a very terrible disease. Are you telling me, Pastor Sal, that if my mother had just believed a little bit harder, she may not have died? That's not what I'm saying. It's not what Louise Hay was saying, and it's not what Jesus was saying. Healing takes many forms. Your mother may not have been physically healed, but that does not mean that healing did not take place. To heal means to make whole, to make holy. And it manifests in many ways, sometimes physically, but sometimes spiritually. It's why we see in today's gospel both examples. The gospel starts with Jesus physically healing Simon's mother-in-law who has a fever. But then in the rest of the gospel story, it says Jesus went out and he cured many people of demons, people who were possessed. Now, I've shared this with you before. There is no devil. There's no red guy with horns and a tail and a pitchfork. Okay? That is not what this means. Okay? The Hebrew word Satan doesn't mean red guy with horns. Okay? It means adversary, opponent. This adversary is not an outside entity. This adversary is within you. It is that voice within you that says, you're not good enough. You'll never be healed. You're not special. You'll never accomplish anything. It's why Jesus said that Satan was the father of lies. It is those lies that your ego tells you because it wants to keep you from experiencing your wholeness. When you believe those lies, you experience dis-ease in your life. The purpose of the spiritual life, the purpose of our spiritual practice is so that we can call out those lies that we hear. We can speak truth to them and stop listening to them. And what our spiritual practice does is it helps us to attune more clearly to the truth, to the voice of the divine. Stop listening to the voices of the false self and start listening to the voice of the true self. When you do that, healing takes place. Now, my favorite line from today's gospel has nothing to do with anybody getting healed. It's the line that says, early in the morning, while it was still very dark, Jesus went off to a deserted place alone, and he prayed. That is how Jesus accessed the power within him, through the practice and the power of prayer. And we can do the same. And that's what I'd like to invite you to do this week. I'd like you to find time each and every day in the morning, while it's still dark, to go off to a deserted place alone, that sacred place within you. And in that stillness, awaken that power. Awaken that inner healer. Renew your mind. Get in touch with that power within you. Trust in that power. Believe in that power. That power will heal you and will heal the world. Namaste.